This episode was recorded during the virtual meeting AI and the Environment, Impacts and Innovation, organized by the ParlAmericas Parliamentary Network on Climate Change and Sustainability and its staff network on April 25th, 2025. In this presentation, we hear from Svante Persson, Senior Operations Specialist at the IDB Lab of the Inter-American Development Bank Group, who shares his insights on the role of artificial intelligence as a driver of climate and environmental innovation. Mr. Persson explores concrete applications of AI to accelerate sustainable environmental initiatives across the region. He highlights how AI tools are being used for biodiversity conservation, predicting climate-related risks, and supporting data-driven decision-making and environmental projects. He emphasizes the importance of designing these tools with inclusive values and cautions that, while AI holds great promise, it must be implemented with clear ethical guidelines and sustainability goals. Moreover, he discusses how parliaments can actively support the responsible deployment of AI by enacting regulatory frameworks that address its environmental impacts while fostering innovation.
For the invitation. The topic of the day goes to the heart of what we do here at the IDB Lab, especially in climate adaptation and biodiversity conservation. As you may know, the IDB Lab is the venture and innovation arm of the IDB. And so what I will be talking about here mostly pertains to private sector development and entrepreneurship, not large-scale public infrastructure work, which is what the rest of the bank mostly does in the public sector. So I will focus on how AI can improve biodiversity conservation and sustainable use of bioecosystems and for managing natural assets and adapting to a changing climate. Specifically, these tools help with data analysis, remote surveillance, predicting threats and prioritizing conservation areas, and also for improving communication. While there are challenges in building capacity and ensuring access to these tools, we here at the IDB Lab believe that long-term benefits will outweigh these challenges and making AI a valuable tool in many climate and conservation efforts. Said there are risks and shortcomings with this technology, but I will try to focus on the opportunities today. And the following are the 5 main ways that we see AI can be used in conservation and climate adaptation. And the first is by assessing and streamlining data analysis. This has to do with assessing the value of nature within a given area, which is one of the main challenges for nature conservation and ecology. Conservation organizations need to know the types and amounts of species within a conserved region to know the presence of endangered species and design new conservation programs. And AI can help with the remote collection of data using sensors like camera traps, microphones placed in forests, and images from satellites and drones. AI can also simplify this process by automatically transforming images and recordings into usable information. And this can help these organizations to focus on the actions to preserve nature. And just to give you an example of projects that we here at the IDB Lab are supporting is a project called the Savimbo project, which develops an environmental credit methodology for agroforestry systems led by local and indigenous communities, including the use of AI to monitor and to validate these ecosystem services. They employ machine learning algorithms to analyze data from satellite images, biodiversity, audio, and ground-based sensors to detect regeneration patterns, cover changes, and estimate carbon sequestration and biodiversity. This analyzed data enables the traceability and transparency necessary for the evaluation of nature as an asset. As a second use case is monitoring and enhancing surveillance capabilities. In addition to assessing the current state of these natural assets, we must also monitor the areas for potential disturbances like poaching and illegal logging. However, limited natural and human resources often prevent widespread monitoring across vast nature reserves, like, for example, in the Amazon. Modern technology makes deployment of remote sensors possible for covering these expansive land areas. Constant human surveillance of these sensors can prove very difficult for conservation organizations that often work under a very tight budget. So here, AI solutions can come into play, automatically filtering out irrelevant data and directing attention to potential issues within this nature reserve. One example that we are working on is the Tech for Nature Mexico project, which accelerates mangrove conservation and regeneration and biodiversity in the Zilam State Reserve through artificial intelligence for detection, monitoring, and analysis of key species like the jaguar. The jaguar is used as a proxy indicator for biodiversity conservation. Using camera traps, audio recorders, we have collected more than 100,000 images and 600,000 audio files, which were analyzed using AI algorithms and networks and acoustic models to identify these animals and their activity patterns and assess the health of the ecosystem. A third way is to predict and proactively identify threats. Efficient resource allocation within large areas make it necessary to identify and assess potential threats for these nature reserves, like poaching, deforestation, and also natural disasters. AI can drastically improve the work of conservation organizations in this area. And although many AI-led predictive models have specific scopes focusing on deforestation risks or various impacts on climate, they often outperform human capabilities thanks to the ability to effectively calculate risks based on these vast amounts of data that they can process. An example that we are working on is the MARE RD project, led by the Dominican Foundation for Marine Studies, Fundemar, which is implementing these AI on the Reef cloud platform to analyze underwater images and marine data for reefs in the southeastern Dominican Republic. The system uses AI to identify, quantify, and classify coral cover, enabling the decision-making for adaptive conservation actions. And AI can also reduce data processing time by half, generating early alerts and creating interactive digital dashboards for the staff of these organizations. In general, AI can help complex decision-making and facilitating informed choices. While these organizations that work in biodiversity conservation and climate have a clear mandate to protect specific lands and sequester carbon, there are regions where the exact boundaries for these nature reserves and parks need clarification, and determining these boundaries often involves species preservation and balancing them, and the needs of communities and inhabitants and the restricted budgets that they have. And here the use of AI can assist with complex decision-making by creating these models for the area and considering all the available data. Programs can suggest viable courses of action that align with these restricted budgets. And this can also allow for conservation organizations to determine courses of action that allow for preservation of as much as possible of the nature, given the constrained budgets and the interest of all the different stakeholders. And finally, in communication, oftentimes in these projects, we operate in countries where English is not the primary language, leading to communication barriers when working with international partners. And text models such as, for example, ChatGPT can aid these non-English organizations in international communications. And moreover, AI models can create images, assisting in designing supporting visual content, and these models are often relatively inexpensive so far, or even actually free to use due to the companies behind them wanting to scale up. And so we suggest, and we actually try to always suggest to these conservation organizations to explore how they can use different technologies such as AI before the prices rise for these models. And one example of this usage is the Regen project that we are working on in the Amazon as well, that integrates AI, drones, and satellites to map and restore degraded areas in the Peruvian Amazon. Working hand in hand with local communities, AI is used to identify critical areas, restore scenarios, and distribute benefits throughout these areas. For example, with digital tokenization of bioeconomic assets and using traditional knowledge and ancestral knowledge supported by these digital tools. In this way, conservation incentives are aligned with transparent and fair valuation of local biodiversity and ancestral knowledge and language, which generates new markets and these type of personalized tools. I can give you hopefully some useful tips and lessons that we have learned in our projects on how to integrate AI that can help avoid some of the pitfalls and the past errors like biases and exclusion when using AI. So first, there has to be local ownership. It's very important to get local communities involved in these AI solutions. They have to be empowered to take charge and make sure that they have all the resources and support they need, and working with local communities throughout the whole development process of these projects and the models themselves, and design these AI systems together with them and not just for them, and to make sure that the needs and perspectives are included. Secondly, to create strategic and participatory collaboration, team up with all the various stakeholders to leverage artificial intelligence for social good, creating alliances and opportunities for collaboration that really can boost the potential of AI for inclusive development. Third, I would like to highlight transparency and accountability, which is fundamental, and making sure that these AI tools and systems are transparent and accountable, and documenting AI decision-making processes clearly and early, and have mechanisms in place for auditing and addressing biases. There has to be an ethical design to these models. Incorporate ethical considerations into all AI design is super important, and aligning the AI development with international standards and principles to prevent preserving human prejudices and errors. You have to include capacity building in the projects, building capacity among all stakeholders to develop, adopt, and finance AI-based solutions that incorporate ethics and responsibility-based criteria. This helps ensuring AI benefits to all groups in society, especially the marginalized and the vulnerable. And finally, environmental sustainability, like was mentioned earlier, considering the environmental impact of AI development has to always be taken into account. Training advanced AI models can produce significant carbon emissions, so it's important to adopt sustainable practices in AI development. Lastly, I just wanted to give a shout out to our program ParlAmericas, which is a partnership between the public and private sectors, civil society, and academic institutions in the Latin American and Caribbean region, which was created and led by us at the IDB Lab with various partners. It's designed to influence public policy and the entrepreneurial ecosystem in promoting responsible and ethical use of AI, and you can find it on our website. I'll stop there and thank you very much.